Hey, you. If you're here, maybe you've loved someone so deeply that you slowly started losing parts of yourself. Maybe you were the one who gave more, apologized first, stayed longer, tried harder. Maybe you believed that love meant holding on, even when it hurt. And maybe, somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing the person you became in that relationship. If any of that sounds like you, welcome. This is After You Left, I Started Loving Myself, a space where we talk about the kind of love that breaks you and the kind of healing that rebuilds you. I'm Olivia, and today I want to begin with a story. It's not dramatic. It's quiet like most heartbreaks really are, but maybe in Lena's story, you'll hear a little bit of yourself too. Have you ever felt this way? Your love started out intense, but it faded into something dim and quiet. You kept thinking you weren't enough in love, so you tried harder, compromised more. You believed he loved you too, just that he had his own pain, so you carried the weight of the relationship alone. It all seemed to come from love. But one night, staring at your puffy eyes in the mirror, you suddenly realized you hadn't taken care of yourself in a long, long time. I want to tell you a story about someone. Her name is Lena, a friend I met during my exchange year abroad. She wasn't the kind of person who stood out in a crowd. She was quiet, a little shy, with a gentle voice and a soft, warm smile. The way she loved mirrored who she was, quiet, thoughtful, always giving. But I didn't truly see her until one night. It was 3 a.m. in the kitchen. I went downstairs to grab some water and saw the light was on. Lena was sitting at the table, a half-finished glass of milk in front of her. Her phone lay face up on the table, and her tears were silently falling into her palms. He said he's under a lot of pressure and asked me not to be so clingy lately. But I'm not clingy, I just wanted to say goodnight before sleeping. Am I really too needy? Back then, I didn't understand what emotional codependency was. I just thought Lena cared too much, that her whole emotional world revolved around him. Later, I realized she was caught in a kind of relationship pattern, one that feels like love, but is actually a slow, quiet erosion of the self. Psychologist Ross Rosenberg once defined emotional codependency as more than just giving or depending on someone. It's the state where you only feel valuable when someone else needs you. This kind of love isn't about connection. It's about imbalance. You become someone who constantly tends to others' emotions, but forget that you need to be cared for too. You start defining your worth through someone else's needs, and without noticing, you stop being yourself. In that relationship, Lena tried so hard. She remembered all his meetings, made him midnight snacks, even picked out gifts for his mom's birthday. But the moment he gave her a tired or impatient glance, she'd lie awake all night wondering what she did wrong. She told me she was scared of being too much. Too loving, too emotional, too needy. So she learned to silence all her needs. She believed being understanding was her way of showing love. But do we really need to shrink ourselves in order to keep someone? I didn't know what to say back then. But I remember what she said to me. I don't know what parts of me are even mine anymore, because I've spent so long trying to become who he wanted me to be. Some people say that those who fall into emotionally codependent relationships are simply too insecure or too weak. But from Lena's story, what I see isn't weakness. It's a learned way of loving, shaped since childhood. Lena grew up in an unstable home. Her father was an emotionally volatile engineer busy with work, under a lot of stress, often breaking things or going silent for days. Her mother, on the other hand, was the kind of woman who just wanted everything to look fine. She endured everything quietly, never crying, never complaining, never saying too much. From a young age, Lena learned this. If I can be a little more obedient, a little more understanding, if I don't upset Dad, maybe the house will stay peaceful. Her way of loving wasn't a free-flowing emotion, it was a survival strategy rooted in the craving to be needed. She learned how to read others' emotions, how to adjust herself just right, all for the sake of receiving a sliver of warmth in return. That same way of loving carried into her adult relationships. She found herself constantly guessing how her partner felt, often sacrificing her own needs to keep the peace. She believed that if she just tried hard enough, the other person would love her. She believed she only mattered when someone else needed her. In truth, many people caught in codependent relationships are carrying a deep, invisible void from childhood. It's not that you truly want to keep giving endlessly, it's that you're afraid of being left behind. You're afraid that being too much, too loud, or too vulnerable will make you unlovable. You're afraid that the moment you start caring about your own feelings, the other person will stop caring about you. So you keep suppressing, sacrificing, and compromising until you lose sight of who you really are. Lena once wrote this line in her journal: "I feel like a mirror always reflecting everyone else's needs, but no one ever sees me." Isn't that heartbreaking? Isn't that heartbreaking? When someone has been taught from childhood that love means pleasing others, that safety means suppressing themselves, can we really blame them for not being brave enough? Sometimes it's not that we don't want to love ourselves, it's just that we never learned how. Many times, stories of codependency sound like one person giving endlessly while the other fails to appreciate it. But in truth, these relationships are a two-way street of control and need. The only difference is one uses sacrifice, the other uses emotional distance. Lena's boyfriend in that relationship wasn't a bad person. He had just gotten used to Lena always being there. Whether he replied to her messages or not, whether he had emotional outbursts or went silent, she was always there, like air. He never told her directly what to do. But every moment of silence, every lack of response, subtly trained Lena to become more obedient. He didn't need to demand anything just by withdrawing. He knew she would adapt. That's the coolest part of emotional codependency. You think you're the one making choices, when in fact, you're being controlled all along, and the one doing the controlling might not even realize it. He's simply been spoiled by a dynamic that always worked in his favor. There was a night they had a huge fight. Lena had a fever, but he still went out drinking with friends and didn't stay with her. She kept it in for 2 days, then finally exploded over the phone. The first thing he said was, "I didn't think this would bother you. You've always been so understanding." Lena froze when she heard that. In that moment, she realized it wasn't the first time. The entire relationship had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding. He had long since defined her as someone who didn't need to be taken care of, not because she didn't need it, but because she had never said it out loud. In a codependent relationship, the deepest pain isn't just being ignored. It's realizing that you love someone so hard you lost yourself, and they saw it all as normal. That's no longer just love. It's chronic manipulation. And Lena, after hanging up the phone that night, finally began to ask herself, if I keep holding on like this, will it ever truly lead to happiness? In the 6 months before Lena left Ryan, there was a period when she suffered from daily headaches, insomnia, and had trouble eating. At first, she thought it was just work stress. She thought maybe she was just being too sensitive. Until one day, while taking a shower, her fingers accidentally brushed against her collarbone and she was startled. She had lost so much weight. Her body had shrunk noticeably, and yet she hadn't even realized it. That's what emotional exhaustion looks like, how the body begins to speak when your feelings are being ignored. We often tell ourselves, no matter how hard a relationship gets, just hang in there, it will pass. But the truth is, humans aren't made of glass that shatter all at once. We're more like concrete walls. Cracks appear slowly, one by one. It starts with anxiety, then comes silence, then self-doubt. And finally your body begins to sound the alarm. When Lena finally saw a therapist, the first thing she said was, I feel like I'm no longer myself. The therapist didn't rush to comfort her. Instead, they asked, "Can you remember the moments when you stopped feeling safe to be yourself?" Lena thought about it and said it probably began the first time she compromised. The first time she held back her feelings just to avoid upsetting him. The first time she learned to tend to his emotions before her own. In psychology, there's a vital concept called emotional boundaries. In a healthy relationship, each person should be able to maintain their own emotional space. But in a codependent relationship, that boundary often becomes blurred or sacrificed entirely. We tend to believe that love means merging, becoming one. But real, mature love says, "You are still you, I am still me, and we choose to walk together." Not, "You must become what I want," and not, "I'll become what you like." But that wasn't what Lena experienced. She once told me, "I don't know what it is about me he actually likes, so I just watch his reactions to figure out how I should talk, how I should laugh, how I should dress." She never thought she wasn't good enough until this relationship made her start questioning herself. And that's a terrifying feeling, when someone becomes too focused on meeting the other person's expectations and emotions, they unconsciously shrink themselves into a version that's non-disruptive. She became more careful, more considerate, more gentle, but also less and less herself. I remember she once asked me, "Do you think I'm too sensitive? Am I being overly emotional?" She wasn't born insecure, but in a relationship where her feelings were constantly dismissed or ignored, she gradually started choosing not to feel at all. That's the beginning of emotional withdrawal. We think compromising can earn us love, but too much compromise only leads to losing ourselves. And over time, the other person loses respect for us too. There was one moment she shared with me that stuck in my mind. They had planned to attend a friend's wedding together. Lena dressed up carefully. She wore a cream-colored long dress, even did her nails in soft pink. As she spun in front of the mirror, she asked Ryan, "Do you think this looks good on me?" He was scrolling on his phone, didn't even look up, and said, "Don't you look better in black? This one seems kind of plain." She paused but smiled and said, "Okay, I'll change." She wasn't even angry. She just quietly went to change into a black dress. Later, she told me, in that moment, the only thought in her head was, "As long as he's happy." But behind those words was a woman who had turned herself into what he liked, just to earn a little more love. And in the end, she realized, no matter how much she changed, his love remained hot and cold. No matter how obedient, understanding, or thoughtful she was, he still didn't seem to care much about how she felt. That's when she finally understood. Love can't be begged for. It can't be traded through sacrifice. Love is about mutual recognition. It means, I can safely be myself and you won't leave. But in her relationship, Lena learned the opposite. If I show any emotion, you'll become impatient. That led to a dangerously toxic cycle. Over-controlling emotions, emotional implosion, emotional disconnection, loss of self. She stopped expressing dissatisfaction. She stopped saying, "I don't feel okay." She didn't even dare to have expectations for her own birthday anymore. Because she knew expectations lead to disappointment. Disappointment makes her want to cry, and crying makes him see her as a burden. That's not love. That's slow, emotional self-destruction. She once said, "I know this isn't healthy, but just the thought of losing him makes it hard to breathe." That is the deepest bind of codependency. During one therapy session, the therapist told her something she later shared with me. If a relationship makes you feel less and less like yourself, then maybe it's not love, maybe it's the erosion of your self-worth. We should never allow a relationship to make our boundaries negotiable, and we should never get so desperate for warmth that we leave ourselves shivering. Now that you've heard this story, I want you to pause and ask yourself, in the relationship you're in now, do you still feel like yourself? Do you remember what it feels like to be truly at ease in your own skin? If all you do is retreat, apologize, and question your own worth, is it really worth holding on to? After her therapy session that day, Lena walked out of the clinic. It was 6 in the evening. The sky looked like a heavy moisture-filled grey-blue cloth. There was no sun and barely any wind, but she said it was the first time she felt like the pressure in the air had lightened, just a little. She didn't go home right away. She went to the bookstore upstairs at S-Light, found a random corner, and sat down. She put her phone in her bag, didn't scroll, didn't check anything. She just sat there, quietly, with herself. She said, "In that moment, I suddenly realized it's been so long since I felt this kind of quiet, not just around me, but in my mind. After a breakup, what hurts the most isn't always the loss of love. Sometimes it's losing that version of yourself, the one who once felt so good in his eyes. But maybe it's exactly because of that loss that you finally get the chance to see who you really are, without needing anyone to define you, or like you." Lena started doing something she had wanted to do for a long time, but never had time for. She signed up for a small pottery class. She said when she was in love, she didn't dare to waste time. She was afraid he'd be unhappy, afraid she'd fall behind, afraid being too busy meant not having time to be with him. But now she decided to keep every Saturday afternoon for herself. She said pottery is actually really hard to control. One wrong move and it gets out of shape. If the wheel spins too fast, the whole piece can collapse. But the process of slowly fixing things felt like she was also slowly healing herself. Turns out, life doesn't need someone next to you to feel complete. Turns out, I can do a lot of things on my own. One time, she made a cup. It was asymmetrical, slightly crooked, but she still brought it home and gently placed it in her cabinet. She said, "I didn't throw it away, because I wanted to remember the day I tried so hard to love myself." That sentence stayed with me for a long time. You know, we often think that loving ourselves means being perfect, being confident, living a beautiful life. But truly loving yourself is this: when you're still broken, still lost, and you still choose to hold yourself tightly and say, "It's okay, I'll stay with you, we'll take it slow." That is what real healing looks like. There's a concept in psychology called the reconstruction of self-identity. In simple terms, it means when someone goes through a breakup or major emotional collapse, they temporarily lose their sense of who they are, and what they need the most in that moment isn't to jump into a new relationship, but to slowly redefine who they are. 1. During that time, Lena did 3 things, and I think they're worth sharing. 1. She wrote down 10 things she used to love but forgot. She found a quiet cafe, pulled out her notebook, and wrote 10 things she used to enjoy. There was reading mystery novels, night biking, acting in her high school drama club, baking, singing. She told herself, "In the next 3 months, I'll go find them again, one by one." It's a simple exercise, but it goes deep. You start to realize so many of your joys didn't exist because of someone else. 2. She practiced speaking without apologizing or pleasing. She made a rule for herself: if it's not my fault, I won't say sorry. Sounds easy, but for someone who's used to people pleasing, it's really hard. For example, before, if she had to reschedule with a friend, she would immediately apologize. "I'm so sorry, can we change the time?" Now she says, "Something came up, can we reschedule?" She said that made her feel like she also deserved to be understood and respected, instead of always being the one who made others comfortable. 3. She faced the fear of falling for someone again. One day she messaged me, "I think I might like someone, but I'm scared I'll fall into the same patterns." I told her, "Then take it slow. This time you don't have to rush to make him like you. Ask yourself instead, do you like who you are right now?" One of the biggest side effects of codependency is thinking, "I have value because I'm loved." But the real antidote is knowing, even alone, I am worthy of love. Eventually, Lena did enter a new relationship, but she said, "This time I didn't choose someone to avoid being alone. I chose him because for once, I finally had space to give and to receive." We often think leaving someone is the end of everything, but more often it's just the beginning of truly loving yourself. You don't need to become someone people want. You don't have to prove you're worth staying for. You just need to, every night, tell yourself one thing: you're already doing great. Really, you don't have to keep pretending. And at the very end of this episode, I want to leave you with the words Lena left for herself. "I spent so many years learning how to make others happy. Now I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to make myself happy." If you're in a relationship that's making you question your worth, I hope this story reminds you, love should never cost you yourself, and healing doesn't need anyone's permission. As long as you're still willing to turn around and look at yourself, there's always a way forward. There's always a way out. This is Olivia. Thank you for being here with me tonight. See you next time on another quiet night with a new story that just might feel a little like your own. This series will have 10 episodes in total. If this one spoke to you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to me.